Hey fashionistas, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today we are doing exposed muscles, which is both long and complex, but the techniques are actually quite simple, so bear with me. This is the longest tutorial for a while. I'm taking this Mayron water activated face paint in white and tan, a foundation brush, and Max Fix Plus all mixed together to create my face paint. The Fix Plus does help it stick to my face, and I'm also using this reference image to help me keep everything organized. So with the white and the tan mixed together, I'm going to start creating the exposed bones. Now don't be nervous with this step because nothing really in any face paint or makeup is permanent. Everything can be removed and added more to, and the shapes can be changed. I just want to map out a little bit of what this reference image shows, but then I also want to change the shape to fit my own face, and then also make some more curved and edgy lines that might not make sense, but they overall make the makeup look a little bit more striking. So I'm adding it to my cheekbone area, and then up into my temple, and then down again into my cheekbone some more. So I want to create the overall shape of this makeup with the bones, and then the muscles are going to wrap around it. So I want the bones to shape it as much as possible, and then also I'm going to do the side of the nose. So I'm using Beachberry by Mayron, which is a little bit of a lighter red. I go in with a darker red later to help with shading, but I'm going to apply only a couple muscles at a time. So I'm using this flat brush with the face paint, and I'm applying it to do that nice jaw muscle. But again, I'm doing this in sections because they do go in different directions and I don't want to get lost. So I'm doing little here at a time. So starting with the jaw muscle, and then now I'm going to add the temple muscle, just applying it first to my hair. This obviously is easier because I have short hair, so if you don't, you can actually, just switch things up a bit, but I'm applying it and then also fading it into the bone using a little bit of a light texture, so you want as little product as possible to kind of fade it into that bone. We're going to go in more with more detail. This whole makeup is about detail, so bear with me, friends. But then I'm also going to do the forehead section because these sections are so far from each other that it'll help with not getting confused. So I'm just applying it to my forehead like the reference image shows me, which is a little bit anatomically correct, and just going with it all over the face. So now I'm going to add a little bit of shading around the bone. I'm using a brown eyeshadow, not with black. Black's a little bit too stark. So I'm using a little bit of brown eyeshadow on both edges of these bones to make it protruding. I want the bones in this makeup to be the most protruding and the highest points of the entire makeup, and that really helps with cohesion and everything looks together and it flows better together, so it's not just a big blob of stuff. So I'm using this, it's by Mayron. It's a white face paint. It's a liquid form, and it comes with this little like eyeliner shaped brush, and I'm using that to start highlighting the red part. So basically how I do with makeup, I just do midtones, which is the red, highlights, which is the white, and then shadows, which is the black. So I start with midtones, then I highlighted, and now I'm shading. So I'm using a lip brush by Smith, and I'm using these straight lines to create a little bit of shading, but you can see now that I'm adding more black on the base of it because it's casting a shadow from that jawbone. And then now I'm going again to the top cheekbone, and I'm going to create a shadow coming from there as well. You want to use structural light to help make your makeup look a little bit more convincing by shading where it would be appropriate. Now with that same brush, I am highlighting right at the beginning of the bone, fading it into the muscle. This is going to help the bone fade into the muscle, but it's also going to create depth and texture using those lines. So I'm curving them in a concaved downward motion, I guess you could say. And then going in again now with shadows, which is this black face paint, and then again with the same Smith lip brush. Use anything that can give you a really thin line. And I'm using that now to add texture, but also separate the muscles. So I'm adding shadow to the left side of this muscle now, and then again to the top part of this bone that extends inward, and then I'm going to do the same thing at the top of the bone, the temple bone, right now. See, boom. Okay, so shadow all the way around, and then these curved lines to help with the grooves and the texture marks of muscle. So I'm using this liner brush by Sigma, and I'm going to start highlighting the forehead. I wanted to use something a little bit different because I can get a little bit of a straighter line using a liner brush than I can with the Mayron liquid paint. So I'm going in with structured lines first, and then with less product, you can see now I'm tapering it inward to create more furrowed texture, so it's not so much of a structured straight line, and it's more erratic, almost like hair marks, like my werewolf tutorial. So we're going to go in with that to add some of that white texture and then break it up with shading. So now again with black face paint. You can use black eyeshadow if you're not as comfortable with the opacity and getting different creams and textures with face paint. So I definitely use eyeshadow because it's a lot more forgiving and it's a lot softer. But going in with black now, and I'm applying it all over the muscle. Now I'm contouring that bone line again, And I'm going to do that again on the other side of the muscle later on. But now I'm using red face paint to blend out that black line so they're not as stark. This is all about blending in texture, so definitely play with it and go section by section so you don't get lost. But then even in this tutorial, I hated it for like an hour because I'm like, this isn't going to work. But it works out. Just keep going. Stay resolute. But now I'm adding a little bit of red around my eye, and I'm moving on to more muscles now that I have some done, so I can at least know direction. I'm adding a little bit of muscle underneath that jawbone, and then connecting it from this cheekbone into going towards my mouth. Does that make sense? I wish we were all doctors so I can tell you the name of these actual muscles, but I don't know them. But I'm just adding more. See, can you see that I'm adding it in a streaky line and I'm leaving skin showing through and adding highlight as I'm going? I would do the entire makeup that way. I didn't think about it until now. But now I'm adding more bone. So I'm just getting a nice opaque face paint to add right on top of that red without mixing together and turning into a pink. But I'm adding a little bit more bone here. And then I'm bringing the jawline closer to my chin. Boom. So now I'm adding more highlight to wrap around that eye. So I'm adding more bone. Ooh, sorry, I'm yawning. I'm adding more bone to go around the eye, and then even more bone going towards my nose. I wanted a lot more bone than what you'd normally see anatomically, because it's kind of like a skull muscle hybrid. But now I'm doing the eye, so I'm adding highlights first, and then I'm going to go in with midtones and then some shadows. So this is Mayron's face paint in red, which is a little bit darker than Beachberry, and I'm using that to buff out the white, and then I'm added some black lines, but I hated it, so I'm adding more highlight lines in, and then more shadows, and now I'm putting white underneath my eye bag, and I come back to the eye because I hate it. But now I'm doing the cheekbone, so I want this cheekbone now to be the highest point in the makeup, so therefore I am shading black lines right underneath it, so everything looks below the cheekbone and the cheek muscle. So that's what I'm doing here now, is I'm landing right beneath that cheekbone, and then I'm going to highlight that little bit of muscle in between. So I really hope this is making sense. I want the cheekbone to be the highest place, so I'm adding shadow underneath it. But now I'm adding highlights, and then again with more shadow. This is just to add texture to that small, specific triangle muscle, and I'm no longer working on the cheekbone at this time. Does that make sense? I really hope so. So I decided to fill all of this in with black to add more of like a skulled, hollowed appearance, and then I'm highlighting a little bit more on that small muscle and getting it off my eyes. And now I'm going in with the, my phone. I'm going in with the last part of the muscles, and that's going to be connecting into my nose. And then I'm shading some more into that bone place. But of course, my camera's out of focus. The more dehuman I look, the more my camera has a hard time focusing on me. But now I'm doing the same technique again. I'm just adding these curved highlight lines, and then I'm going to go in with midtones and shadows to break those up. But I like to do the highlights first. So I'm highlighting, I'm wiggling my body around, and now I'm using shadow. This is the red face paint. This isn't black. It's a little bit of black with the red face paint mixed together. And I'm just going in with the same pattern and layering products over the top of each other just to create the more natural looking texture possible. You want to add more than you would think, if that makes sense. So then now I'm being very strategic in my placement. So I'm going to get a very nice straight white line, and then I'm going to shade above and below it. Do you feel me? Like before it was kind of more erratic and textured, but this is a little bit more specific. This is a hard thing to teach, man. This ain't easy. So now I'm using a brown eyeshadow to shade around the bone like I do in my other skull tutorials, which you may have seen. And that's pretty much shading to leave a little bit of white line right at the edge of the bone so that it looks like it's protruding outward and it gives it more depth. I threw in this white context, which I'll have linked down below. And now I'm focusing on making the muscle blend into the bone. So I'm using a very thin angled brush, and I'm just doing small straight lines into these bones on all of these sides to help the muscle fade into the bone. So everything else is a little bit more structure, and then now I'm going into more finer detail. And I'm doing the same thing at the temples, fading into the cheekbone. Oh yeah. So now I'm going around the nose bone. So I'm adding a little bit of red where I want the red, but I'm also fading it into the bone using those straight lines that I was just doing previously in the temple and the cheekbone. So filling in the red part of the muscle and then blending it right into the bone. I'm not going a little bit too extra on the texture around the nose bone area, but we'll get to that later. But again, it's the same technique we've been using. And then I decided that I wanted a little bit more muscle on the forehead for this half muscle face. You could do the entire thing. This took me like 3 hours to do just half my face. So if you have 6 hours, go for it. Do your whole face. But now I'm adding more texture marks using the red, which again is darker than the Beachberry. So now I'm taking a spoolie with black face paint, and I'm using that to quickly add the same scratch texture marks that we've been doing this entire time. It's a very quick way. It's not as precise because it's larger, but I'm applying that all around my hairline, blending into my hair to get rid of that skin color, but then also into the muscle, so the muscle fades into the rest of my head. Since this is a makeup, I want cohesion and blend, and then I'm doing that all around the jawline as well. Going in with some black eyeshadow, I'm going to fade in and connect the shading from the top of my forehead to the muscle in my brow bone, and then I'm also going to line the edge of the muscle too, just to create a nice separation from my natural skinned face into the muscle face. And then I'm using my finger just to blend it out, and then again my finger to get any red off of my actual human skin tone on the other side. Does that make sense? It's a little messy. Use a makeup wipe at the end, it's okay. But now I'm shading around my nose to add some depth into my nostrils, around my chin, and then fading. I had to add more red to get it a more even half face, but then adding it to my lips and all that good stuff. So just to further enhance that the cheekbone is the highest part of the makeup, I'm adding more black eyeshadow right beneath it, all the way across, so it gives a more illusion that the cheekbone is the highest place and that the jawline sits directly underneath it. Do you feel what I'm saying? So that I'm doing that to the bone, to the muscle, to everything that's around and underneath that cheekbone. I'm adding some white highlights to the bones just to create them so they really pop, and it really adds a nice finishing effect and everything looks more completed. And I'm adding that all around the bone area. And then I'm adding a little bit of black eyeshadow to my eye just to add a little bit more depth and structure. And then I'm adding some white to my lips and then doing a kissy face and adding red on top of it. So when I open my mouth, it gives you that textured white line. Adding some black to my ears, around my nose and my furrowed brow area. I added some white to the brow hairs on my eyebrow. And then I'm just structuring up the black around the mouth. And then that is the finished tutorial, my friends. I hope this makes sense, and I hope you guys learned something. I love you guys so much, but this is one of the more complex makeups that I've ever done on my channel. But I hope that you guys try it out. And if you guys want to recreate this or any of my looks, definitely tag me on Instagram, social media. I love to see it and connect with you guys. But I love you guys so much, and I hope you guys like this video, and I will see you guys next week. Bye, friends.